The Murdershelf Book Club contains disturbing content related to real-life crimes. Listener discretion is advised.
Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
At 5:15 p.m., 4 of the apps were dead. If the gunman knew the family's Friday night routine, he might have been expecting both Margie and Michael at any moment. The light-colored wall phone in the kitchen rang 5 times at 5:45 p.m., adding to the frenzy. The killer needn't have fretted. That particular Friday night, Michael was setting up for his friend's wedding, and he still needed to pick up some things at another friend's house in nearby Oakford. Margie would come through the kitchen door next because she had rushed from her Center City office building to Suburban Station to catch the 5:13 commuter train to Trevose Station. From Killer in the House by Kathryn Canavan. Welcome to the Murdershelf Book Club podcast. I am your host, Jill. Okay, so today we are starting my new true crime book, to be featured, The Amazing Book by Kathryn Canavan. Episode 173, Lying in Wait. Part 1 of 4, on Killer in the House, 10 Days of Terror in a Pennsylvania Suburb, published in February 2026. On one of the most sensational crimes of the 20th century. I love this book. I love it for its accuracy, for the historic context that our author provides, so we understand the town, the people, the times. And she shows such respect for the victims and their families. This is a terrible crime, and one that is well remembered here in Pennsylvania, where I live. My interview with our author, Kathryn Canavan, will drop when the trilogy is complete. And what an amazing woman and career, not to mention the book. All right, Kathryn not only looks back at these crimes that occurred 50 years ago, but also at the role that she plays in it as it unfolds, which is a unique perspective for a journalist. At age 25, her journalism career was focusing on the crime beat, writing crime stories for a suburban daily newspaper. By age 26, she had covered a mass murder, reported one story at gunpoint, and negotiated the surrender of a killer who was subject to a 5-state manhunt. Yeah. Now, in taking on this project, she also spent 2 years researching, digging up records, finding the people who lived through this, and wrote a terrifying, tension-filled manuscript with a minute-by-minute account of the murders, which I will get into shortly. But before we begin, if you have a book or a case you want to suggest, I invite you to join my Patreon for $2 to $4 a month at www.patreon.com/Murdershelf Book Club. We Zoom on the first Thursday of the month, talking true crime, documentaries, and we select the next true crime book to be featured. And I do my serial killer case studies as well. Well, you can't make it at that time? I record our Zooms, no problem. But we also don't call this the Murdershelf Book Club for nothing. Book club means, in this case, a Pennsylvania appetizer and wine pairing. I love this recipe. It is a Pennsylvania staple, fried mushrooms with smoky remoulade sauce from Emily C. at food52.com. If you follow it step by step, it's really pretty simple, and it took me about 20 minutes to make. You do start with 3 bowls, but trust me, it's not that complicated. You mix your panko and parsley, pulsing it in a food processor until it is finely ground. Place that in bowl 1. Pour buttermilk into bowl 2. Then put flour in the 3rd bowl, mixing it with the lemon zest and spices. So now you dunk the mushrooms with stems cut off, and I wound up skewering it with a fork to do this. You dunk the mushrooms in the flour, then the buttermilk, then the panko mix, and set aside. When all of the mushrooms are covered, you pour oil in a pan, and when it is simmering, you fry the mushrooms at medium heat, turning them gently. When they are golden and crispy, you remove them. Now you have to make up the smoky remoulade sauce, and this is a snap. You mix the mayonnaise, capers, 2 types of mustard, smoky paprika, and I do recommend smoky paprika, lemon, and salt and pepper to taste. You mix it up, you serve the sauce with the mushrooms, and you will love the delicious cacophony of flavors that erupt in your mouth. I am not kidding. It is that good. Now, given the fried coating and the creamy, smoky remoulade, a wine with high acidity is needed to cleanse the palate between bites. So I am going to pair our mushrooms with Daenerys Grenier Vetliner 2023 from Laithwaites.com Wine Club. And Daenerys is not a Targaryen. It is the ancient name for the Danube River. From the Niederösterreich region of Austria, Windsor Krems, a highly respected wine cooperative, produced this crisp, light-bodied white with a refreshing crisp lime and green apple notes. It is known for its signature zesty white pepper, which perfectly complements the smoked paprika and the herbs. Now, it runs $21.99 when you join Laithwaites, which I do highly recommend. And the link is on my blog at www.murdershelfbookclub.com, July 2026, for the recipes, where to order, and my sources and photographs and diagrams and all of that as well. So bon appetit, murder cookies. And we will begin our first episode on Killer in the House, 10 Days of Terror in a Pennsylvania Suburb. Our headlights illuminated the front lawn like a scene from a Hollywood movie. Men bundled in coats were inspecting something on the grass. Nearby, the Philadelphia mobile crime van was parked, with faint sounds of police radios and walkie-talkies crackling in the air. It was March 12, 1976, and she was the only reporter on the scene, a complete fluke. Kathryn worked as a reporter for a daily newspaper in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. She had pulled into the lot in front of a 7-Eleven convenience store, hoping to grab a cold Pepsi. The manager, who had proven to be a valuable source in the past, mentioned that 2 detectives had come in earlier, asking if he had seen any strangers around. Well, he hadn't, but he asked why the officers wanted to know, and they explained that they were investigating a multiple homicide at a house located at the corner of such and such drive. Well, appreciative and armed with this information, Kathryn drove the 3 minutes to the crime scene in Trevose, a suburb of Bensalem Township. 50 years ago, Trevose was characterized by its hills and oak-treed woods. Over time, it transitioned from a rural area to a classic working-class suburb, complete with the neighborhood's school, pink mimosa trees, and sumac thickets. Kids would ride their bikes and play games like kick the can or foursquare, organizing themselves after finishing their homework, and would wrap up just in time for dinner. It was a safe and homey environment. Car keys were often left in vehicles, and middle schoolers would band together and pitch tents outside in a collective sleepover under the summer stars. Quote, "No one foresaw that one of the Philadelphia area's most notorious crimes of the 21st century would unfurl there, end quote. Perched on a hilltop, the house was a traditional two-story structure adorned with evergreen shrubs in the front yard. 4 cars occupied the driveway, 2 newer models alongside 2 older ones. It was now 9 p.m., and the men working on the property showed clear signs of focus. They were intent on their tasks, leaving little room for her to ask questions. As she stepped out of her car, notebook in hand, she barely made it onto the driveway before being firmly told that no one was allowed near the property. Had Kathryn arrived 75 minutes earlier, she would have seen 21-year-old Michael Apt pull up in his new turquoise Ford Galaxy 500. He thought it strange that there were cars in the driveway with no lights on inside. As he entered the house, he noticed a broken pane to the right of the lock on the kitchen door. Flipping on the light, he saw a blood smear on the linoleum, and his eyebrows shot up in shock. His first thought was that someone must have had an accident. But from that moment on, his life would forevermore be divided into 2 parts: before March 12, 1976, and after. Michael called out, but the house was eerily silent. He then noted the blood-soaked towels. As he rushed through every room, he found no one, just nothing. It was also strange. Suspecting someone must have pushed their hand through the broken window, Michael decided to call the local hospitals. Now, this is happening 15 years before Trevose would have 911 service, and Michael found out that no Apt had been admitted to any of them. Feeling baffled, he ran across the street to ask a neighbor if an ambulance had come to his house. Isabel Young answered and spied the visibly upset Michael. She replied no, just as a police car turned down the street. Patrolman Dave Cleese, who had been on the force for 3 years, was headed home for a dinner break, delayed by an earlier arrest. When a rattled Michael approached his window, he told Cleese that his family cars were in the driveway, but nobody was around, and he'd seen a lot of blood. Cleese, who knew the Apts a little since his children were younger, noted Michael's distress and got out of the vehicle. Inside, Cleese saw the kitchen floor smeared with dry blood. Some had also run down the walls. In the living room, a chunk of carpet was soggy with blood, but the Apts had vanished with their St. Bernard. Cleese worked his way through each room, one by one. In the kitchen, he noted the 2 saloon-style doors leading to the basement. Had Michael checked down there? As Michael reached for the doors, Cleese stopped him. Pressing one side open, he shone a flashlight downward, which revealed the dead body of Jack Apt. Letting the door swing shut, Dave Cleese was startled as it hit him. He had seen 3 bodies. This was a massacre. And Michael was asking, what? What is it? As a night of terror began in Trevose. Down the street, Donna Cleese, Dave's wife, wondered why her husband had stopped at the Apts' house. As she walked up their driveway, she saw Dave gently guiding Michael out the front door, and he whispered to Donna, filling her in on the situation. Being a nurse, her skills would be helpful as she accompanied and agitated Michael down the street and away from the house. And Michael was shouting, quote, "Who is it? My God, will you tell me who it is?" Joining Cleese's younger children, Michael alternated between hyperventilating and mumbling, "What happened to my family?" End quote. More officers arrived at the Apt house, and Michael was escorted to the police station. There, he telephoned his fiancée, saying that he was afraid his little brother had been murdered at his house. Now, given the recent rash of poorly conducted police investigations that True Crime has been covering, I can say that Patrolman Dave Cleese handled the situation correctly. He touched nothing at the crime scene and had Michael escorted to his home a few doors down. To avoid Michael overhearing any police chatter, Cleese used the kitchen wall phone to call Sergeant Bobby Deachant, who initially had to be convinced that Cleese was not pulling a joke on him. While on the phone, stretching the cord as far as it would go, Cleese opened the saloon door again and realized there were not 3 bodies, but 6 bodies, all bleeding from their faces. Rookie Detective Kaiser arrived to recheck the rooms with another officer, and outside they found Heidi, the St. Bernard, collapsed by the basement door with a jacket laid over her. Soon, Lieutenant Ted Zajac arrived in disbelief. Having recently read the bestseller Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi and Kurt Gentry, he was now familiar with the serious mistakes made by the LAPD during the Charles Manson murders, such as trampling on fingerprints and compromising the crime scene. Zajac was determined not to ruin the crime scene, and he was meticulous. In a brutal scene like this, officers often aren't sure which evidence is crucial initially and must mentally deconstruct the sequence of events. Other officers canvassed the neighborhood for witnesses while waiting for the medical examiner to arrive. On the upper floor, officers searched for notes, calendars, and address books to uncover any connections the killer might have to the Apt family. By 8:39 p.m., Police Chief Larry Michaels arrived, telling reporters who had also arrived, quote, "I can see no reason on God's earth why anyone would want to put this family away," end quote. Peggy Apt, age 48, was a devoted wife and mother with long curly blonde hair who always looked lovely and put together. She worked as an accounting clerk at the Internal Revenue Service in Philadelphia. A talented pianist, Peggy was also godmother to a neighbor's young son, and she coached her daughter's champion baton twirling squad. 2 of her cousins were Catholic priests, and her youngest brother, Bill, he served as a detective on the Philadelphia police force. The Apts loved taking thermoses of hot chocolate, building a bonfire, and going ice skating when the lake froze over in the winter. Jack Apt was 1 year older than Peggy. He was tall and stocky, serving as the scoutmaster at the local Methodist church. His brother was a Baptist pastor. Jack worked for Bell Telephone installing phones, and this was about 6 years before AT&T, to be known as Ma Bell, was divided into 7 regional companies, often referred to as the Baby Bells, due to antitrust laws. Jack enjoyed raising chickens from eggs with his youngest son and doing carpentry with his middle son. Each night, he would sit in the living room in his favorite chair, reading the daily newspapers and piling them up next to him when he finished them each day. Recently, a group of teenage boys had vandalized the Apt lawn by throwing trash and breaking some windows. Knowing that their parents would do nothing, an unfortunate parenting mistake, Jack laid in wait in the dark with his dog Heidi by his side. When the boys arrived again, he cold-cocked them. Boom. They never came back. Margie Apt, she had just turned 19, and she was working as a filing clerk at FMC Corporation in Philadelphia. This chemical company had diversified its operations, so producing not only M113 armored personnel carriers during World War II, but also fire trucks, and later expanded into the agricultural sciences. Warm and personable, Margie had very long light brown hair. Although she was naturally quiet, she was starting to come out of her shell after going on vacation to Hawaii with a friend the previous year. She dreamed of becoming a nurse, but she needed to find the money to pay for school. Garson Gary Engel was only 20 years old, and he shared dinner with the Apps almost nightly. He adored Margie, whom he had been dating for 2 years. Gary worked as a delivery driver for kosher products at a local butcher shop owned by Tony Cantelli. Tony described Gary as, quote, a beautiful kid. He was nice, mannerly, quiet, and always on time for work. Gary never had a chance to be a slacker. He had been working like a man since he was 12, end quote. With long, wavy, dark hair, Gary's arms were adorned with tattoos of skulls, crossbones, and the Grim Reaper. While tattoos weren't unheard of at this time, they were less common than today. 13-year-old Johnny Apt had hazel eyes, slim build, and broad shoulders with brown hair. He was a scout in the troop that his dad led. Johnny loved fishing with his friends and building campfires. His brother Michael had taught him how to shoot a single-barrel shotgun that had been a Christmas gift. Johnny also knew how to operate a CB radio, which was a rage at the time, and he was looking forward to getting one of his own soon. On this particular day, Johnny's plans to stay late at school had changed, so he took his usual bus home, arriving at his house just after 3:15 p.m. Kathy Apt was a year younger than Johnny. She had expressive hazel eyes and light brown hair styled in soft layers. Tall for her age, she was attractive and well-liked. Athletic, she played basketball and ran track. Today, she had had a track team meeting, so she would be taking the late bus home. Michael, the outgoing, tall, blonde middle son, came home for dinner late, just minutes after the killer gave up and departed, missing him by minutes. Michael had been laid off from his job as an asphalt paver for the winter. He would be best man at his friend's wedding on March 13th, so he spent much of that Friday setting up tables at the reception venue. The eldest of the Apt children was 23-year-old Clifford, tall and lanky with square shoulders. He reminded some people of Frankenstein, earning him the affectionate nickname Stein. Currently, he was in jail at the Bucks County Prison, which likely saved his life. Clifford could be cocky and had a quirky sense of humor, traits that had often gotten him in trouble since middle school. Now family members started to arrive at the scene. Police officer Bill Haney, Peggy's brother, was inside the Philadelphia mobile crime van parked on their front lawn. Reverend Lawrence Apt was with Michael at the police station, and he looked so much like his brother, many people did a double take. On that Friday night, Kathryn Canavan was unaware of any of this when she chose to go home without interviewing anybody. Her paper wouldn't publish again until Sunday, so she had plenty of time. Had she known that 6 bodies lay just 60 feet or 18 meters from her front bumper, she probably would have decided to stay. Kathryn also had no idea that 2 more bodies were lying dead 4 miles or 6.4 kilometers away. They would not be discovered for another 2 days. A long, long week was just beginning. And please keep in mind, this is 50 years ago, long before the era of 24-hour news programming and cable TV. There is no social media, no cell phones, only landlines, 3 major TV networks, and the daily newspapers. Now, a year earlier, Kathryn had encountered a problem with Police Chief Larry Michaels over a murder story, and he had threatened to arrest her for aiding and abetting. While passionate about her role as a reporter, Kathryn had refused to back down. As a result, she knew that getting a scoop on whatever had gone down at the Apt house would be unlikely. Kathryn had always aspired to be a reporter. As a child, she was inspired by the comic strip heroine Brenda Starr, who always thwarted evil characters and reported the truth. The comic strip, which began in 1940, ran for 70 years and likely inspired many other young girls as well. Well, now Kathryn's plan was to return early Saturday morning and write a compelling story for Sunday's front page. Young and self-assured, Kathryn did not fully grasp the gravity of the crime, which is not surprising since this was an unimaginable horror that would tarnish this lovely neighborhood. She headed home to her rental, a tiny red cabin nestled in the woods just under 2 miles away. Cozy and inviting, the living room featured a fireplace made of rocks that were still part of the cliff. Since her parking space was located at the top of the cliff, she had to carefully navigate down to the cabin while holding a nylon rope, the only railing available. Well, the rent was good and it was private, and a colleague had jokingly remarked that if she were killed, they might not find her for weeks. Well, before the advent of mobile apps, people would call their local police station to inquire about incidents going on in the area. And in Bensalem, an overwhelming surge of calls flooded the dispatcher's line after Action News reported a major story. 6 people were dead. As the news spread, local residents became fearful and refused to open their doors, even to the police, who faced their intense questioning. Uniformed officers started accompanying plainclothes detectives to get people to open the door and speak to them. Questions arose. There were 7 members of the Abt family, but only 6 were deceased. Who was still alive? And the police were not sure either. The only individual who seemed to have answers was a thin male intruder in a leather jacket who approached the Abt driveway sometime after 8:30 a.m. that morning. Michael Abt was the last one out of the house that Friday, hopping into a friend's car. He had no idea that eyes were watching him. Quote, a lean gentleman in a leather jacket materialized in the Abt's driveway, and the family was about to receive an unwelcome visitor who would change everything. End quote. Shattering the window pane in the kitchen door with his gun, the man reached inside and turned the lock. By 8:15 a.m., he was inside and cleaned up the glass. The creaking floorboards upstairs gave him a moment's pause as he moved deeper into the house, eventually sitting by a double window in the bright living room. His watch had begun, and it would last over 11 hours. He ate nothing, drank nothing. He simply sat and waited. His plan was to eliminate the Abts, one by one, as they arrived home. The temperature was around 30 degrees Fahrenheit or -1 Celsius. Thus, he anticipated that each family member would enter through the kitchen, where they would go and hang up their coats in the living room closet. This was where he intended to intercept them. The killer wedged himself into a 17-inch wide hiding space by the piano, and that's 43 centimeters, and waited. He could see anyone approaching the house. And Kathryn Canavan includes a diagram in her book to illustrate this, and I recreated it for you, posting it on my blog at www.murdershelfbookclub.com, July 2026. 10 a.m. Watching. He wanted Michael Abt to come home so he could kill him. Unknown to his patient killer, Michael was at Sam's bar enjoying a beer and playing shuffleboard. He needed a ride so he could head over and buy the used Ford Galaxy 500 he had been mulling over. 11 a.m. Mailman William Strange put the mail in the Abt's mailbox, mounted on a post near the street. He noticed nothing amiss. Purchase complete? Michael pulled up in his driveway in his new car. On alert, the killer was prepared. He had taken every precaution. The grip on his gun was designed to reduce hand fatigue, and he wore soft-soled boots to maintain stealth. His gloved fingers would leave no fingerprints behind. Concerned that a shot might damage his hearing, he wore a headband with earplugs. And to be sure, he loaded his pistol with lethal hollow-point bullets that would expand upon entering the victim's body, doing serious damage.
Oh, God.
He knew that the Apps were all taller and stronger than he was. Kathy, at just 12 years old, already stood 5 feet 8 inches tall, or 1.7 meters. He observed every move that the oblivious Michael made, patiently willing him to come inside the house. He wanted to kill Michael. But disappointment washed over him. Michael retrieved his unemployment check from the mailbox and drove away in his Galaxy. Resigned, there were still 4 hours until middle school let out for the weekend.
I'm Hannah. I've lost 75 pounds in 20 months with GLP-1s, plus diet and exercise. On Row, I've gone from struggling to run a mile to running farther every day. You can access FDA-approved GLP-1s online. Get the support you need to reach your weight loss goals. Go to row.co/weight to see if you qualify. I'm a paid Row partner. 20% average weight loss in 1 year in non-diabetics with obesity or overweight with a weight-related medical condition versus 3.1% in placebo arm. RX only. To stay informed about serious side effects, go to row.co/safety.
Back in the 1960s, Jack Apt had largely finished building their home himself, having installed the electric, the sheetrock, floors. This was just after Kathy, their youngest, was born. And Kathy would walk through their entrance by the kitchen at around 4:40 p.m., excited for their Friday night fish fry. Since the killer was shorter than the Apts, he planned to rely on his Sturm Ruger and the element of surprise to gain an advantage. No one would expect a thin person to suddenly emerge from this 17-inch gap next to the piano and start shooting. Fortunately, this type of home invasion was and remains exceedingly rare, according to the FBI database. And then at 3:15, the school bus carrying Johnny Apt came down the street. He was easy to spot in his red and yellow plaid jacket. His friend, Gary Mitchell, almost went home with him, but they decided instead to make plans to go fishing together tomorrow. As Johnny and another friend walked home, they noticed that the Apt chickens had wandered too close to the road, so Donnie shooed them back up the driveway towards their pens. And strangely, neighbors would report seeing the chickens near the road again around 6 p.m. After parting ways, the neighborhood boy headed home, and Johnny walked into a death trap. If Johnny noticed the broken pane at the kitchen door, he wouldn't have thought much about it, because he had broken it twice himself. As he entered the kitchen and made his way to the living room to hang up his jacket, a dark figure suddenly appeared, someone wearing a metal headband and dishwashing gloves and brandishing a gun. At extremely close range, less than 18 inches, the gun went off right into Johnny's face, and it was over. The killer planned to drag the body to the furthest corner of the basement, but his plan went awry. A ruckus erupted on the second floor as a St. Bernard bounded down the stairs, Heidi coming for the shooter, coming to protect her family. He fired at her, the bullet striking the toilet in the bathroom at the top of the staircase, as an angry, quote, massive, muscular old dog was gaining on him, and he was about to experience the slightest fraction of the horror he had just inflicted on Johnny, end quote. Running around the living room and shooting, 5 bullets struck Heidi until she wobbled from the bullets expanding inside her. Ducking underneath the saloon-style doors in the kitchen, Heidi retreated to the basement, where she would hide from thunderstorms. The killer caught his breath, noting the shell casings and spilled blood. He dragged Johnny's body into the basement, and Heidi was still breathing. He fired a shot and draped a jacket to conceal the faithful dog's body from anyone who might walk past the basement window. Heidi died a hero, defending her home and her beloved family. Now, the killer rushed upstairs and grabbed a bathroom towel and blotted up the blood, but it still looked a mess. Was his advantage, the element of surprise, blown? He spread Jack App's newspapers over the blood puddles to hide them and resumed his waiting in his nook. Between 3 and 3:30, Ted Baker drove past the Abt house, noticing nothing amiss. At 3:40, Maria D'Ambrosio, a 13-year-old paper girl for the Courier-Times, knocked on the back door to collect payment. She received no response and found it strange that she didn't see or hear Heidi, who usually growled at visitors, and she left planning to go roller skating with her friends. But she shared this strange story with her mom, who suggested Mrs. Abt might be in the tub with the dog in the bathroom with her. Oh, if only. Shortly after 4 p.m., Dot Lombardo drove down Fleetwood Avenue and spotted Peggy Abt in her sporty yellow car. They waved at each other, unaware of what was waiting for Peggy in her home. Her gravel driveway crunched under her tires and would have alerted the killer within. Climbing the steps to her kitchen door, Peggy straightened her ring, a white metal band featuring 6 crystalline birthstones on her finger, 1 for each of her family members. Wearing a lovely black dress and a fake fur coat, she always looked put together. 25 years earlier, Peggy Haney and Jack Abt attended pre-Cana counseling at St. Dominic's Roman Catholic Church in Philadelphia. They planned and had built a good life together with their children. Peggy's co-workers were aware that she was worried about her eldest, Clifford, since he was in jail, but she hadn't shared any of the details of why he was there. Clifford's fiancée, Shelley, she had a child and an ex-husband who was a member of the infamous Warlocks Motorcycle Club. And Peggy had shared with her colleagues that Jack had been diagnosed with terminal cancer 2 years earlier, and that he now had about 9 months to live. After Jack's death, Peggy would need to support the family with her salary. Previously, Jack had purchased 2 life insurance policies, each worth about $15,000. One of these policies was a double indemnity policy, which would not pay out for a death by cancer, but it would for accidents or homicide. Jack was working ardently, doing carpentry on the weekends and saving the proceeds for the inevitable financial challenges that they knew were coming. But despite these heavy burdens, Peggy had been upbeat on March 12, 1976. Arriving home about 4:15, Peggy barely shut the kitchen door when the shooter acted, not giving her time to notice the mess in the living room. Shooting her 4 times in the face, Peggy was thrust backward through the saloon-style doors, down the stairs into the basement. Still gasping, he dragged her towards her son's body, stuffing a rag in her mouth to stifle the sound. Now he went back upstairs to wipe down the blood from the kitchen, and when the linoleum looked no worse for wear, he resumed his vigil in the nook next to the piano. Next to it was a laminated clipping of the engagement announcement for Candida Jean Klesch to Michael Abt, the son of Mr. and Mrs. Jack Abt, and police would tag this as evidence. Had the killer read it while he sat there and wait? At 4:30 p.m., a Sears delivery truck drove by just as Kathy Abt was walking up her driveway, wearing jeans and a white t-shirt and a navy coat with earth shoes. Oh, I remember earth shoes. The heel was lower in the back than in the front of the shoe. It made sense at the time. In 7th grade, Kathy was known to be nice to everyone, not, quote, mean like some of the popular girls, end quote. On the bus ride home, Kathy had chatted with her friend Karen, and the duo said, quote, I'll see you Monday. Kathy entered the house through the kitchen door and passed by the swinging door, blithely unaware that a man was counting her steps. Then everything veered, end quote. The gunman acted, and Kathy's mouth dropped open as he fired twice into her face, so close that, quote, the cinder-like particles of unburnt gunpowder dotted the inside of her throat, and she fell to the floor alive, end quote. Picking her up, he carried her down the basement steps, dumping her next to her mother. Moaning, he stuffed a gag into her mouth and then shot her in the head. He returned to his perch to wait. Jack got into his station wagon to head home around 4:48 p.m. He had projects he wanted to complete around the house this weekend. Cancer wasn't going to stop him from doing what he could. The very week he told the kids about his cancer, one of his scouts had been arrested, and, too terrified to call his father, he called Jack instead. Jack drove over and picked him up and took him home, helping to break the news to his parents. Known as the cool dad, during driving lessons, he would teach his boys how to make their cars backfire, producing a loud popping noise. At 5 p.m., the car drove down Fleetwood Avenue. It was Ed Cooney, who lived down the street, and he was heading to the bowling alley. Shortly after, Jack pulled into the driveway. The killer, unable to see clearly, heard two voices nearby and anxiously waited. Would one or two men be coming in the house? But no, it was only Maria, the paper girl, returning after she saw Jack arrive home. And he happened to have enough money in his pocket to pay her for the papers. What if Maria had gone inside with Jack to get the money? As Jack entered the house, Maria had walked off and was halfway down the driveway. Jack didn't see Peggy and wondered where she was. Earlier in the day, he had picked up a record she liked at Two Guys discount department store, and he planned to give it to her. Heading towards the coat closet, he was ambushed. Quote, without any warning, the killer burst from behind the living room wall, pointing a pistol. There may have been a whoosh of recognition before the shooter, with the light brown hair, fired into Jack's right eye at extremely close range, end quote. And he would shove the body down the basement stairs. The waiting continued, with three apts still alive. At 5 p.m., Michael was busy setting up for his friend's wedding and wouldn't be home for a while. At 5:13 p.m., Margie left Center City, catching the commuter train from Suburban Station to the Trevose station. Since it was payday Friday, she and some friends had cashed their checks and had gone out for lunch. Margie mentioned to Karen Foster that Gary, her boyfriend, was taking her to the Rustler Steakhouse for dinner to celebrate their second anniversary as a couple. Although Gary was quite serious about their relationship and wanted to marry her, Margie was unsure and was considering breaking up with him. She had tried to end things before, but Gary always managed to talk her out of it. And additionally, she shared that she dreaded the day that she would come home and find her dad was no longer there. Arriving at Trevose station, Margie called her dad, but he didn't answer. Fortunately, her friend Carol Ebersole was there doing a pickup, and she could give Margie a ride home. About 6:10 p.m., they arrived at the Apt house, where both her parents' cars were parked, and Margie wondered why they hadn't picked up the phone. Thanking Carol, she entered the kitchen just as the phone rang, which caught the killer off guard. It was Judy King calling for Kathy, and Margie said, quote, "She's not home. I'll have her call you back," end quote. But just as the call ended, the killer struck, raising a pistol alongside Margie's face. In that moment, she caught a glimpse of a figure with wire-rimmed glasses and a metal headband as a bullet was fired into her cheek. She did not die instantly, so the killer fired again, a fatal shot into the top of her skull, and then shoved her downstairs, where she landed next to her father's dead body. At 6:15, Dot and Frank Lombardo drove past the dark Abt house, noting the cars were in the driveway, and Dot found this very odd. If their cars were there, the house is pitch dark. Where were they? Inside the house, the killer wiped blood from the kitchen floor for the 5th time, his nerves fraying as the phone rang repeatedly. What if someone became suspicious? What if someone called the police? As he weighed the decision to stay or leave, his choice was taken from him by a knock at the door. Garson Engel, called Gary by everybody, was Margie's strongly built boyfriend, and he walked into the kitchen. Gary was described as, quote, a big, lovable goofball, the kind of person who tries to help people, end quote. Gary had faced many challenges in his life. After losing his parents and his grandfather who raised him, he also had to care for his grandmother during her battle with cancer, doing his best to support her during this difficult time. Now he lived in a trailer. Some of Margie's friends didn't believe that Gary was good enough for her. However, he was a hard worker. That afternoon, he washed his delivery truck, preparing to head out at 3 p.m. He told his best friend, Dave Nugget, that he was excited to celebrate his 2nd anniversary with Margie that night. Right before 6:30 p.m., Gary pulled his 11-year-old blue Chevy Impala into the Abt driveway. Knocking, there was no answer, and Kathryn Canavan writes that he could have circled back later to pick Margie up. Instead, Gary walked into harm's way. Gary was much taller and a much bigger guy, so the killer waited until the exact right moment, firing at point-blank range, a .22 Magnum hollow point bullet through Gary's face, it exploding in his brain, killing him instantly, and his body joined the others at the bottom of the basement stairs, a towel and an old tire placed on top of him. At 7 p.m., there were so many bodies that the killer had to arrange them so nothing would be seen underneath the saloon doors. He also placed a number of items next to the dead: a cookie jar, Peggy's purse, and 13 quart-sized beer bottles. And then he went upstairs and cleaned the kitchen again. Outside, between 5 and 6 p.m., something scared the chickens, causing them to flee down the street away from the Abt property. And now, inside, the phone was ringing again, jarring the nerves of the gunman. He really wanted to kill Michael Abt, but any caller might alert someone, which could be his undoing. He was also hungry. He hadn't eaten in 10 hours. And when the phone rang again, the killer had had enough. It was time to go. His 10.5-hour spree was over, and he walked out the Abt's front door around 7:15 p.m. With the moon more than 50% illuminated, he removed his glasses in case he was seen, hoping to throw off any potential witnesses. He left behind no fingerprints. As he crossed the lawn, he felt good. Quote, he had gotten away with the worst murder in Bucks County history, or at least it seemed like he had at 7:30 p.m. on March 12th. Later, he would tell people he was sorry about one thing that happened that day, and it was not the children's death or the fact that his deeds were forever irreversible. It was just that he couldn't stick around long enough to kill the last two Abts, Michael, 21, and Clifford, 23, end quote. Oh, wow, that is cold and that is premeditated. And he missed Michael by minutes. The killer was not aware that Cliff was in jail, which he would read about in the Sunday newspaper. When Patrolman Dave Cleese discovered the massacre, the killer was eating a tuna fish sandwich and watching TV. At 2 a.m. Saturday morning, The family that ran the Scottsville Inn finally collapsed in relief when their daughter, Kathy Urban, walked into the pub. Without cell phones, they had been terrified that she was one of the 3 female victims at the Apt home. Kathy was Margie's best friend, and she spent most Friday nights at the Apt house. As Kathryn Canavan slept, Dr. Halbert Fillinger, the real-life version of Quincy, the popular TV character played by Jack Klugman, who was known for his impeccable medical examinations, arrived. A gun owner and expert in terminal ballistics, Dr. Fillinger had served in the Navy. A forensic pathologist, he frequently spoke at the FBI Academy in Quantico. Quick to smile and possessing a lightning-fast wit, he had an eidetic memory, and his vanity license plate read Palm Hal, short for Homicide Hal. He was methodical in his work and well respected in his field. On one occasion, Dr. Fillinger, who was a talker, invited Kathryn Canavan to observe an autopsy of a very advanced body, and this experience proved to be more educational than any science class she had ever taken. With Lieutenant Zajac observing, the doctor quickly realized that none of the 6 victims had fought back, each shot to their face. There were no signs of sexual assault, and nothing had been ransacked. Several victims were still wearing their winter coats. Using the 16th century definition, this was a shambles, a scene of gruesome slaughter committed by a killer who had invaded a family's home. This was grim tableau, with 2 children dead. Zajac would say, quote, "You think, Christ, how can somebody commit a crime against a kid that age?" End quote. Jack's blood had pooled and his car keys were lying next to him. Margie's mouth had dropped open, the bullet causing, quote, scarlet tattooing as it pierced her face from forehead to chin. It outlined her lips and dotted the inside of her mouth, unquote. The bullet had shattered Gary Ingles' spinal cord. Johnny's bullet had stuck his cheek, exploding in his head and neck. And the close-range tattoo mimicked a strawberry birthmark, stretching from eyebrow to chin. By now, he was in full rigor mortis. Kathy shot 3 times, and the others were just beginning rigor mortis. Fingerprinting the scene, where 7 people lived, along with their guests, was a nightmare. Detective Bill Edwards, the department's evidence technician, was assigned the task of photographing the house, unsure of what even constituted evidence at that point. Bullet fragments were discovered in the living room, hallways, and in the upstairs bathroom. A bullet had chipped the porcelain toilet. The front of the refrigerator was also damaged, and a bullet was hiding underneath a chair, and was even found in an unassuming loaf of bread. A perfectionist, it took Edwards 8 days to map the bullet trajectories, during which he endured some teasing about making a sandwich on the job. Meticulous, every possible piece of evidence was processed. Notably, a size 9D bloody footprint was left in the basement after the killer had moved the bodies around. The alarm and fear that spread from this incident reached across Pennsylvania, especially affecting Officers Deschant, Cleese, and Eckert, who grew up in Trevose. The murder of 6 people at point-blank range was shocking, particularly in such a neighborhood. Unlocked doors became rare as lights were set on timers. When dogs barked, people rushed to see the cause. The family had been brutally slaughtered and the killer was still at large. And for 10 days, haunting questions plagued the community. What happened? Who did this? Why? Veteran Sergeant George Berry faced the difficult task of house-sitting the Apt home. Quote, even years later, he said it was the worst feeling he had ever had in his life, just strange beyond belief, end quote. And law enforcement themselves, they were shaken by the homicides, as this killer waited inside a loving home picking off victims one by one. Before the Trevose slayings, most mass murderers were known for isolated incidents, like the 1966 shooting from the University of Texas clock tower, where 18 people died and 31 were injured. Similarly, in 1972, a gunman opened at Key Personnel Incorporated in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, killing 6 men and injuring 6 others over a failed job application. Previously, I've also discussed John List, who murdered 5 family members in Westfield, New Jersey. This case has inspired podcasts, 3 films, a Netflix miniseries, and an exhibit at the National Museum of Crime and Punishment in Washington, D.C. And let's not forget the Amityville Horror House on Long Island, where Ronald DeFeo Jr. shot his parents and 4 siblings. And this tragic event was soon followed by reports of demonic infestation, which also inspired a number of films. However, this was not a case of a family annihilator or a disgruntled employee. Why, then, had the killer orchestrated a plan to kill the Taps? Maria D'Ambrosio, the paper girl, was picked up by her mom at the skating rink that Friday night. Her mom asked if she had noticed anything unusual at the Apt house. No, Maria hadn't. Struggling to find the words, her mother eventually blurted out, quote, "Well, they were all killed," end quote, thanking her lucky stars for her daughter's near miss. A neighbor remarked that it felt like something from In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, the book that really started the true crime genre. The Apt family was typical, middle-class, decent people, all except for that one son in jail. And this detail drew the police's attention to this fact for the next 10 days. Clifford Apt was expecting a visit from his family in jail on Saturday, March 13, 1976. Instead, he was learning the devastating news that his parents, a brother, 2 sisters, and his sister's boyfriend were dead. Only his brother Michael survived. Clifford called his fiancée, Shelley Robbins, who was expected for dinner at the Apts that Friday night. She had canceled, not feeling up to the drive from Philly. An article later appeared titled, "Shelley Robbins Missed Appointment with Death." That Saturday morning, the police investigated the crime as news of the Apt family murders continued to spread from Hackensack, New Jersey to Honolulu, Hawaii. The family cars were impounded. Footprint casts were made from a muddy spot near the back window. The Apt swimming pool was drained, but no weapons were found. Heidi's carcass was sent to the University of Pennsylvania Veterinary Hospital for a necropsy. And Chuck Engel, he called the dispatcher on hearing the news on the radio that his nephew, Gary Engel, was involved in the shooting. Imagine hearing that on the radio. Officer Cleese told the press, quote, "You expect this kind of thing to happen far away in Texas or California, but you don't expect it to happen in your own neighborhood," end quote. A reader in Texas took offense at Cleese maligning her state, writing several letters of complaint to the police chief and then Governor Milton J. Sharp. And I suspect that she was named Karen. Now Dr. Fillinger arrived at the Lower Bucks County Hospital morgue at 8 p.m. to begin 6 autopsies, accompanied by Bensalem detectives. This was Ed Keezer's first autopsy, and he smoked a cigar and stuffed Vaseline up his nose to combat the unpleasant odor. The bodies were labeled H1 to H6 as they started their work. Each piece of clothing was tagged separately and hair samples collected. The radiologist took x-rays while Detective Wagner took photographs. They began with Jack Apt. As the bullets were removed from the bodies, they were bagged and prepared to be sent to the FBI lab in Washington, D.C. The 6 autopsy reports were sent to the district attorney, and they all noted the same cause of death: gunshot wounds to the head. Manner of death: homicide. And Dr. Fillinger, he was able to answer a perplexing question. Why hadn't any of the neighbors heard 13 gunshots? Well, the victims were shot at such close range that their bodies absorbed the sound, acting like human silencers. Oh. Dr. John McGrath's necropsy on Heidi determined that the cause of death was bullet wounds to the head and abdomen. The terrified gunman had shot the St. Bernard, a breed known for their loyalty and playfulness, 6 times. And this knowledge added another layer of sorrow that many, many felt. Kathryn Canavan woke up Saturday, learning that the shooting had resulted in 6 deaths, with Courier Post reporter Robert Merrick writing a comprehensive story in her competitor's paper. Her editors were displeased, but it didn't matter. They didn't print a Saturday edition. And now she was focused on gathering information while 10 of her colleagues fanned out to find more sources. So in 1976, there's no Google. Reporters had to rely on the newsroom library, where they would pull up old stories known as clips. They searched for labels like Bensalem PD, John Platt, Trevose, which had been meticulously saved from newspapers every day and stored in alphabetized brown envelopes, filling dozens of gray filing cabinets. Oh, the good old days, right? And now, armed with this limited information, reporters would then head out to cover the what, who, when, where, and why of the story. There's no sitting around at a computer or doing a Google search or emailing. And Bensalem Police Department. It was established in 1951, only 25 years earlier, and started with 1 officer and 1 patrol car. As the community evolved, the police force grew. By 1976, even with 10 detectives, they were unprepared for the largest murder mystery in Bucks County history. Key questions remained. Were they searching for a lone killer or a group? Was the suspect local, or had he traveled through the area? Murder-suicide had been ruled out, as no gun was found at the scene. Chief Michaels had labeled the killer a wacko and drew comparisons to the infamous Charles Manson murders in 1969. The uncertainty lingered. Would the killer strike again? No one knew. There were no answers. And the shocking murders weren't done. Monday, newspaper headlines read, Langhorne couple tortured and murdered, rare taser gun used on victims before killings. Again? Yes. Ed and Marguerite Volgenberger, both 77 years old, were killed during the same hours as the apps, just 4 miles or 6.5 kilometers away. Someone had entered their stately farmhouse in Langhorne, Pennsylvania, terrorized the couple with this newfangled electric stun gun, and then shot them execution style. Since they lived alone, the bodies were not discovered until Sunday. People were terrified. Was a bloodthirsty, Manson-like cult roaming the area, randomly killing people? And that is where I will pause part 1, lying in wait. 8 people are dead all on the same day, living 4 miles from each other. Who would kill a family and an elderly couple? Was it a cult? And what are the clues? Because there have been some dropped already. Did you hear them? What happens to Cliff and Michael Apt? And part 2 will be out shortly. Be sure to subscribe so you do not miss a thing. Send me your questions and comments on part 1, Killer in the House, to me at jill@murdershelfbookclub.com, and know that I cannot do this without you. Thank you for listening, Murder Bookies. My sources, photos, charts, articles, and food and drink information are on my blog at www.murdershelfbookclub.com, July 2026. And it may feel early, but are you thinking about Crimecon 2027 in Orlando? Well, if so, use my code MurderShelf and save 10% on your badge. I mean, why not? If you like my podcast, please share it with friends and family and leave a 5-star review to help attract new listeners. You can always find me on X, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I invite you to join my Patreon for $2 to $4 a month at www.patreon.com/murdershelf book club. We Zoom on the first Thursday of the month, and we select the next true crime book to be featured on my podcast. And I will do my serial killer case study. My next episode is coming soon, and I see you as you hear me. From the Niederrösterreich, from the Niederrösterreich, from the Niederrösterreich reason, from the Niederrösterreich.
Written and produced by Jill, all rights reserved. Music, The Pewter Elephant by Blue Dot Sessions.